guys, welcome back to the channel. It's a chilly morning here in Central Florida as I'm recording this. And another thing YouTube is teaching me is to always double check that I'm actually recording the content that I think I'm recording. Because a big chunk of today's video is just missing because I didn't actually record it. So lesson learned. I will get better at this as I continue to do these. So one thing that I want to share with you guys is that I selected my word of the year. I've done this for years and years, but my word of the year this year is consistent. So I want to become very consistent in my daily practices. I want to become consistent in my prayer life, in my Bible study, in my health and fitness routines, consistent in my cleaning routines. Like, there are some areas of life where I'm very consistent, but then there's a lot where I need more self-discipline. And I just feel like as I wrapped up 2023, if you haven't seen my recap video, it's the one before this one. But as I wrapped up 2023, one of the things that just struck me was how inconsistent I was in multiple different areas of life. And it led me to the end of the year gaining a whole bunch of weight. I bet I've put on 15 or 20 pounds. I actually am kind of embarrassed because I haven't even stepped on the scale to see how much weight I've gained. But I am so uncomfortable in my clothing. I'm uncomfortable with my body. I feel very bloated and inflamed. And I just know that so much of that is because of the past few months I've been sick, which is not a great excuse. But it's just one of those things where I was sick, so we were eating a whole lot of convenience foods, a whole lot of fake processed garbage. I wasn't making really anything from scratch, a whole lot of takeout, and overeating for sure, comfort eating for sure, just things that I know better, that I cannot do. And yet I was there doing it. So anyways, with the start of 2023, I made my own coffee creamer. I just did some quick Google searches on all natural coffee creamer recipes. It was one less thing I could put in my body that was doing me harm and keeping me inflamed, which is helping to add the pounds. So I know that I'm still using artificially flavored coffee. I'm gonna get there, I promise. So just one little step at a time, because one step is better than not doing anything at all. All right, so in today's video, we're going to be covering just a real quick pantry clean out and reorganization. I did a big deep dive video in my big pantry. I have two pantries. I have the big one for all of our regular foods, the stuff that we're constantly eating and storing. And then I have the small one, which I call my baking and canning closet, which the video that I thought I was recording was the big pantry, and that's actually what didn't record. So what I did record though was me setting up my shots, and then I failed to record actually cleaning, which, it just is what it is. So anyways, yesterday was a canning day. I canned a bunch of beef broth, and the day before that I canned a bunch of ham broth. I want to get a bunch of chicken broth canned as well, but I don't have enough chicken carcasses to actually make the whole thing of pulling the canner down and boiling for 24 hours to break down the bones and everything worthwhile. So that's just going to have to wait. So I use these dissolvable labels from Ball. They just wash right off the tops when you're done. I have some videos of me doing the actual canning that I want to edit and put out later. Little content hint there. So that'll be coming in the future. I don't know when. But all that to say that my kitchen never is not clean. It's clean right now because it's the day after canning and I've scrubbed everything prior to canning and then after canning. But my kitchen's a working kitchen. In my shots, you will usually see some type of baked good rising in the background or something simmering on a stovetop or something. It's always being used. So what you'll see here in the background is pizza dough. I really, really love Melissa Norris's Made from Scratch book. If you haven't gotten it yet, there's a cookbook section in there, and she's got a master bread dough recipe that I use pretty consistently. I used her method for starting sourdough, And it just wouldn't work for me. And I think it's because we live in two very different climates. I think she's up in like Idaho or Wyoming or something like that, and I'm in Florida. But I couldn't get my sourdough start off of her book. But I just YouTubed it, and YouTube University taught me how to do the sourdough. So anyways, but I love the rest of her book. So I use her master bread dough recipe. I didn't have any apple cider vinegar on hand, so I just used white vinegar. It works the same. But just a good homemade dinner where I'm controlling the ingredients, and then I get to control the portion sizes too, which is nice. So one of the things on top of my 2024 word being consistency, one of the things that I need to get more consistent about is making stuff from scratch, where I control the ingredients and I control the portion sizes. So I've just been kind of revamping everything in the house, like everything in the fridge, everything in the freezer, going through the pantry. Okay, what is processed in here in terms of like junk foods or highly processed ingredients, that kind of thing. And I'm just getting rid of that stuff. And I'm not necessarily throwing it out, but I am going to use it up. And so like my pantry right now has a bunch of Christmas baking stuff in there, like Hershey's Kisses and things like that. And that's not stuff that, if I'm being honest, I'm even tempted by. It's not the chocolates that get me. It's like the salty things, like the chips, the pretzels, that type of processed stuff. Absolutely love it. I could eat me a whole bag of Funyuns in one sitting. Not a problem. So my husband and my son, though, they're kind of the opposite of me. They're both tall and thin. They're never going to have a problem with their metabolisms, you know, as things go. My husband's 40 and he's still the same shape and size he was when he was in high school. So it's not really fair, but it is what it is. Honestly, I'm still the same size and shape that I was in high school. So that's not, I was very heavy. But anyhow, I say all that to say that I'm aware that I cannot eat the processed crap any longer. Like, I just need to suck it up. I need to stop being like, okay, what's convenient? I need to stop. And I need to take care of myself. I'm not doing anybody any favors if I'm constantly sick and if I feel so gross about my body because I'm so heavy and so inflamed that I just feel like sick. So I feel sick, but I'm making myself sick, if that makes sense. And then because I feel sick, I don't want to do the things. So then that leads me to more convenient stuff. So as you can tell, I still have that lingering cough. I've had this cough now since before Thanksgiving. It's just not going away. And so I have been working also on being consistent with my herbal and home remedies. So hopefully I'll start seeing something from that as well. Also, what I have scheduled for this year is a bunch of blood work, all kinds of things with my homeopathic doctor, because I'm not consistent in doing the regimens that I am prescribed. So again, consistency. So I know you're here for pantry organization, but I just wanted to encourage you that if you're struggling with consistency, I am too, and we can pray for each other. Pray for me that God will continue to provide me opportunities to become more self-disciplined and more consistent, and I will do the same for you. So with that, all that said, pantry organization. I'm going to start dropping some tips and tricks and what you should avoid. So my number one thing on what you should avoid, I'm going to clear that out right now, is in the thumb shot, or thumb, what's it called? the screen video. Wire baskets. They're beautiful, don't get me wrong, but they're so impractical. I love the whole aesthetic of a well-organized pantry. And mine is pretty organized, but I bought so many of those wire baskets thinking that, oh, it matches my whole aesthetic, and they're just impractical. They don't work. They don't work in a pantry. Also, what doesn't work is like bins. I don't know. For me, I have to see the things. If I don't see the things, I don't know what I have. And I have an app that tells me what I have, and you can see there on the door, I have a list that tells me what I have. And for whatever reason, when I open the pantry, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And then it doesn't get used or it goes bad. So that's just my style, but I would totally avoid. That's why I got the wire baskets, because I thought, oh, you can see through them. So I'll be able to see what I have. but they just are very impractical. And maybe it's the size of my space. Both of my pantries are pretty small. One's a standard coat closet, and the other's just a little bit bigger than that. So those baskets take up a lot of space and they don't offer good storage. So maybe it's just the space. If I had a much larger pantry, it might be different, but they just did not work for me. Also, avoid heavily organizing. Avoid heavily funding organizing until you know how you're going to use your space. This was a huge pitfall that I made when we first moved into this house. I bought a whole bunch of organization stuff, and then it turned out that I don't actually use my spaces in a way that's conducive to having a whole bunch of organizing stuff, like bins and baskets and whatnot. So it was kind of a big waste of money. Now, I was able to use those organizers and baskets in other areas of the house, so it wasn't a complete wash, but still, I didn't even have to buy that stuff. If I would have just waited to organize or to like fund organizing until I knew how I was going to use the space and how the space flowed in daily life, I would have saved a bunch of money and probably a bunch of time too. So, and then that's another thing. Understand that your spaces are going to have to continuously be organized. There's no perfect system out there. And even if there is, you have other people in your space who don't use that same system. So stuff isn't going to get put back. Fingerprints are going to show up. Spills are going to happen. You're going to have to continuously clean and organize all your spaces. Now, you probably won't have to deep clean and deep organize all the time like you do in the initial portion of cleaning and organizing, but you will have to do this periodically, maybe a couple times a year. So my big tip for that is kind of keep a running list of how you use a space. So I don't keep my dishes in the kitchen because we don't use our dishes in the kitchen. I keep my dishes in the dining room on the open shelving in the dining room because we sit at the dining room table to eat, and it doesn't make sense to have the dishes taking up space in a kitchen cabinet when I don't have very many kitchen cabinets. It makes more sense to have the dishes where they're being used, which is at the dining room table. Sure, occasionally I have to walk over to the dining room to grab a plate, to grab something like out of the oven or whatever, but that's just a once in a while thing. And now what works in my kitchen might not work in your kitchen. So just be cognizant of how you use your space because that's going to save you a lot of time and energy and effort. Pinterest and Instagram are great for getting inspiration, but if those inspiration photos don't actually suit your lifestyle or how your space works or how your family runs, then all it is just a pretty picture that's going to frustrate you in the end because you're going to still have an unorganized space with a bunch of expensive organizers in it. So keep that in mind. Some of my other tips and tricks for keeping your spaces organized is to just really consistently go through what you have, like once a month, kind of open each cabinet and be like, okay, I have X amount of chickpeas. I just did this. So yesterday I made falafel because I realized I had like 12 cans of chickpeas. I just had accumulated them without even thinking about it. So I made a bunch of falafel and froze a bunch of it. And now I have homemade falafel that we love for lunch. So I can just pull that out and heat it up for lunch. And look, I don't have to eat something processed because I've made it. And I don't have to order out because I already have it. It's right there in the freezer. And that just took like a little bit of planning. It didn't even take that much planning, honestly, because falafel is super easy to make. But all that to say, go through what you have. Like here I found a bottle of magnesium. I didn't even realize I had a bottle of magnesium and I needed to replace it. So I'm going to keep that out. Like I don't even have to order it now because voila, I had one. So just like be cognizant of what you have on hand. Periodically go through your freezer. What is older? Like what's been in there for a while that you can go ahead and use up. This I just did. I had a bunch of, we ordered a cow. We got a whole cow, I don't know, a year ago. And that particular cow had a bunch of really tough cuts on it. So we didn't like the roasts that cow produced. So they were just sitting in the freezer for a year. They weren't freezer burned or anything like that, but I knew we weren't going to eat them. So I thought, well, how can I use them? you know what? I have a friend who has a meat grinder. So I text my church friend and asked, hey, can I borrow your meat grinder? I've got a bunch of roasts I want to grind up into ground beef because we will use ground beef. And she was like, sure. So I spent a couple days ago, we did a bunch of meat grinding. And now we'll actually use those roasts. I just saved us a ton of money. That was grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And what's that right now? Like $9, $10 a pound? So we got about 10 pounds of ground beef out of those roasts that we ground up. And that was like maybe 2 hours of our time. So I just saved like, I don't know, $100. So, just periodically go through what you have and start making plans for what you've got, because I bet you've got a bunch of stuff on hand that you didn't even know you had. And if you're anything like my family, like sometimes my sister will come home from work and she'll bring like random goodies home, which is super appreciated, but then I don't even know that I have them. And then I like trying to figure out a recipe or something that I'm going to make for dinner, and I just don't realize that I have all these ingredients on hand. Another tip is to periodically also vacuum the floors in your pantries and closets, especially if you have pets. We have a long-haired cat. You're going to see him in all my videos. His name is Tyrion. He is the sweetest cat I have ever had. He thinks he's a dog, but he sheds horribly. So there are giant fluff balls, cat tumbleweeds in the corners of every closet. And we all have allergies, which is why we don't have any carpet. So I have to be on top of making sure that I'm washing the curtains and that I'm vacuuming up all the little corners that the robot vacuum can't reach. So, a couple times a year, I'll pull everything out of all the closets and I'll get back in there and vacuum everything and wipe up spills, because that happens. Thankfully, we haven't had any problems with any pests at all, but I'm sure, that happens, especially if you have like spills and things that haven't been cleaned up in a while. Sorry. All right, so also, like, you're gonna see I have a whole ton of sugar in here, all Christmas baking stuff. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a bunch of cookies, and I'm going to give them away. Maybe I'm gonna drop them by like a fire station or something like that, because the stuff doesn't need to be in my house. I need to get it out. It needs to be in somebody else's house. I do use like sugar substitutes like erythritol and allulose, but not if I have the real stuff on hand. If I have the real stuff on hand, I'll definitely use the real stuff. So I just need to get rid of it. And what better way to do that than with some appreciation cookies for the local firehouse? So also, once you're done cleaning out your space and wiping up your spills, just give your doors, your door handles, and the walls around the area a good once over with some safe cleaner for your paint. Now, I have a high durability paint on all of my walls, which is just something that I chose to do because I know that I like to scrub my stuff. And we have animals, we have kids, we have people over all the time, so everything gets fingerprinted. And I go through and I just wipe down, give a good scrub to all the high touch point areas that get the grime on them. And it just keeps your space looking newer longer and cleaner longer. Even if what's behind it isn't perfect yet, because this pantry isn't done for me yet. It's just not high on my list of projects to finish. It will still make you feel good when you look at it and you realize, okay, I wiped up all those fingerprints and spill splotches, and this is right next to my coffee area, so coffee gets spilled on it. But anyways, I hope you guys are having a great 2023 so far. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much. Solo Deo Gloria.